audience, welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. I'm your host Faraz Darvesh. Today we are sitting in a nice backyard somewhere in Silicon Valley, and our best friend Ms. Bazam, she's been traveling. So today we have various different topics to cover. First of all, today is 23rd March. Hence, we are going to be discussing the significance of 23rd March. Then we will discuss an unfortunate incident that took place in London, the attack near the Parliament in England, in London, and then we'll look into the probe that has been happening between the President Trump's election and the link with Russians, and we'll see if there is any truth behind it, and where will this investigation lead. So Razak, thank you so much. Looking really nice in your glasses today, pretty stylish. Then you could qualify for a model. But anyhow, tell us the significance of 23rd March, because there's been a lot of discussion that 23rd March was not really the resolution of Pakistan. It was more of a resolution of Lahore. So tell us, what is the history of that?
Yeah, so it was a resolution passed by Muslim League at the time in Lahore in 1940. 23rd of March 1940, in a location which is now marked by Minar-e-Pakistan.
Right.
And there are several things in it, but the key thing there was that they sought Muslim majority states in the northeast and the northwest of India at the time.
Which means this was not the current day Pakistan or the Pakistan.
No, the word Pakistan was not yet coined.
Okay.
And in fact the word the state is plural, states. So they did not envision a single country.
Okay.
They envisioned more than one Muslim majority countries within India.
Okay. So no, but was it? So that would have been a states within India.
Yes.
Right. Within larger India, there
No,
would be
not
states.
necessarily. Not necessarily. I think those states could be sovereign. It does not clearly specify that.
Okay.
But the understanding was that these would be sovereign states.
Okay. Okay. So no, I mean, what I would like to understand, there's been a lot of discussion that the Lahore resolution, or the resolution of Pakistan, which we now say did not envision Pakistan. Hence, the way we portray it in Pakistan, that this was when the idea of Pakistan was tabled.
Yeah, it's Pakistan resolution in the sense that they envisioned the partition of India so that the Muslim majority areas could rule themselves.
Right, but it was still under the greater India.
No, not necessarily. There's no clarity on that. Okay. What it is that the word states is used.
But would that have been, was the idea that there would be a greater Indian federation and there would be a Muslim majority state?
I mean, those possibilities were left open for negotiation, but the fundamental issue was that they wanted Muslims to have self-rule.
Okay. So, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion, and in sometime in upcoming days, we'll have an in-depth discussion on this with the other narrative as well. So tell us the unfortunate incident that took place in London.
Yeah, I think let's talk a little bit more about March 23rd. There was a very large parade this time in Islamabad, where not only the Pakistani military but also the Chinese, the Saudis, and the Turkish militaries participated. It's the first time that these other friendly countries have joined in. They showed the military hardware. It ranged from, tanks and artillery to missiles and fighter jets. And this time, one addition that I saw was they had the IT services corps, the signal corps showing, because a lot of the battlefield now is very high tech in the sense that there's a lot of data links that have to be operated. So you need to have that support in the battlefield so that all the people are connected. So that was shown. There was also a cultural event. In fact, there was a theme song for this called Sabka Pakistan, Hum Sabka, Hum Sabka, Hum Sabka Pakistan, that was sung by Rahat Fateh Ali Khan. And there were also events in other parts of the country. commemoration. There was illuminations. In fact, there was an event in the northwest, in North Waziristan as well, where they commemorated the day. Now, one other thing that needs to be understood is that this coincides, with the results of the Indian UP elections, where Yogi Adityanath has been named the chief minister of an Indian state. And this is a man that has a long history and record of preaching violence against Muslims. In fact, he was even charged and arrested at one time. He spent some time in jail for preaching hatred and for attacking, for causing damage to violence
now, isn't it a dark
Muslims.
part of the democracy that you could get somebody like him?
It's very unfortunate that is what is happening right now. Now, this only reinforces the Muslims' desire that someday this could happen. At that time they were talking about a secular democratic country, but in a country like that, you basically minority depends on the goodwill of the majority.
Well, Raz, this could be argued the other way, because a lot of people say that what we are witnessing in India is the retaliation of this whole global terrorism that's been happening around India.
Well, you don't retaliate by screwing up your own country. I think that this element, the Hindu nationalist element, has been there from the beginning. In fact, these are the people who actually killed Mahatma Gandhi himself, and they have been gaining strength ever since.
But if the Pakistan and Bangladesh had not been created, then you would have the pretty big, significant majority of Muslims in India.
I don't think so. I mean, even now, like UP has a very large number of Muslims. I mean, India right now has more Muslims than Pakistan, and in spite of having such a large number of Muslims, they've had very little. I mean, look at what happened in UP. In the Uttar Pradesh election, the Muslim BJP, the majority party there, got a vast majority of the seats, and they did not name even a single Muslim candidate, and no Muslim won on the BJP ticket. The number of Muslims in the legislature has been cut dramatically as a result of this.
All of this is happening, which is highly unfortunate. But the extremist elements in India, they use Pakistan as the rationale, the creation of Pakistan as rationale to
and if it hadn't happened, then they would also use what the Mughals did to them. They have this false narrative. That's the problem. See, if you want to build a narrative to do your heinous things, then you can build. This basically is a problem there.
I think from my perspective,
in fact, if you read the narrative of the Hindu nationalists, it's more about the Muslim rule of India, where they have actually, in fact, there's a lady by the name of Audrey Tashki. She's a scholar. She was at Stanford. Now she's working at Rutgers. She's written a book about Aurangzeb. And what she says is most of what they talk about, the whole narrative is actually false, is fabricated in order to justify their hatred of Muslims and violence against Muslims.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move to the next topic, unless you have something else to cover.
No, that's it.
Okay, so let's move to the unfortunate incident that took place in London, and again, there's the culprit behind this, or the terrorist behind this happens to be Muslim, and he happens to be using looks like apparently was inspired by ISIS ideology, and this is happening all across. I mean, Muslims or enlightened, moderate Muslim like you and I, and a lot of people like us. I mean, obviously, the 1.8 billion Muslims across the globe are not all terrorists. These are very tiny portion of the people. But then again, this entire right-wing wave that's been happening all across the globe, especially in Europe, to India now, to Europe, to US, they strengthen themselves, or they justify their right-wing attitude or their harsh attitudes towards Muslims like you and I, or towards other minority, by using or these guys, these terrorist groups like ISIS, as their justification. I mean, I don't know what to say on this.
Yeah, I think this was best explained by a fellow by the name of Brendan Cox. He is the widower of a British MP by the name of Jo Cox, a lady who was killed I think a couple of years ago, last year, maybe 2 years ago, by a white nationalist in Britain when she visited her constituency. And her husband said that this man who committed this act in London is no more representative of Islam and Muslims
Right.
than this person who killed his wife as a representative of the British nation.
Right.
So I think we have to make a distinction. People have no trouble distinguishing between Christians and the Ku Klux Klan. They know that Ku Klux Klan is a fringe. It is not representative of Christianity. But those same people don't seem to have a problem saying that these terrorists, a few of them that commit these acts, are representative of all of Muslims. So that's the problem.
Let me ask you this: how should Muslims as whole, or the leading Muslim countries, should retaliate on this? I mean, there seems to be no leadership at the Muslim level which would.
No, but this is, it's just, you can't just lay everything at the feet of the Muslim countries. I mean, this man was born and raised in England.
Right.
He was born in Kent. In fact, his name was different when he was born. His name was Adrian Elms.
He got converted.
And he converted later on.
Okay.
And, one of the funny things is that, in fact, it's very sad in a way, that as soon as this happened, Tariq Fatah, who actually takes pleasure in attacking Pakistan and Muslims for everything that happens in the world, tweeted out that jihadi Khalid Masood was born in UK in 1963, but remained loyal to Pakistan, Islam, and ISIS. Food for thought, isn't it?
Which is false.
It's false. He had nothing to do with Pakistan.
Yeah. This is distortion of facts.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that's going on whenever any attack happens anywhere.
Well, I don't take him seriously. Do you take him seriously?
Well, the problem is that he has a big platform right now. He sits on Z News. He has his own show called.
Well, he comes on international media.
Fatwa Fatwa, and somehow people publish his stuff. There's a lot of Islamophobia in the world that takes him seriously. So I mean, people like that are a problem, and the problem is that he actually gets top billings in the Indian media.
Right.
They take him seriously.
I hope people in India kind of realize and go back and check what he says.
And this is not the first time. I mean, his falsehoods are pretty well understood. They're recorded now. So many times he's come out and said things that turn out to be false.
Right. I think he has some issues with Pakistan, some personal issues with Pakistan, which I'm not able to understand what those are.
Either that or somebody else is paying him to do this work.
Well, I don't know who is paying him.
Well, you guessed it.
You openly say that Raw is funding him, but I don't know.
I think it's somebody other who wants to make sure that Pakistan and Islam and Muslims are regularly attacked.
Right. Well, I hope the Indian friends.
And by the way, Islamophobia industry is actually a pretty big industry right now. There are big funders. Just recently, I learned that
a lot of people writing
there's
books.
a company called Robert Mercer. There's a guy by the name of Robert Mercer who actually funded the Trump campaign. He's a big Islamophobe, and it just came out that there was a campaign to stop a mosque from being built in New York near the World Trade Center. And he was the sole funder of that campaign, Stop Ground Zero Mosque campaign.
Right. So, going back, this is definitely not going in the favor of Muslims, especially Muslims living in the UK. The guy was inspired by ISIS. Now, it's a pretty generic statement. He could have been inspired by ISIS, but how should people deal with this whole evil ideology which is being promoted by ISIS?
Yeah, no one person can deal with it. It's international. It's spreading across the world, and every country has to find a way to deal with it. And the best way to deal with it is to not only stop them in terms of their attacks, but also try and change the narrative of Islam. That has been hijacked by these people.
And this is where I say the Muslim clergy comes in.
Not just clergy. I think the clergy should do this. I certainly agree, but Muslim clergy alone doesn't have monopoly over this. The media is a big deal. They can change the perception. The governments can do something. The entertainment industry can do something. And in fact, one of the problems that we're seeing right now is that the Islamophobia that is now spreading in the West is actually energizing these people. who have this narrative that that we're fighting against the West, and they're trying to turn that into a war between the West and Islam, which
is not
some
the
of the
case,
Trump
yeah.
people
Yeah.
seem to agree with, and they're actually promoting this myth that they're at war with Islam.
Oh, which is certainly
false.
Right, right. Now, since you brought up Tariq Fatah, and then you said there's an industry which is flourishing. I mean, anti-Islam or anti-Pakistan industry, which has been
Islamophobia industry,
Islamophobia industry
that
which has been
wants to
flourishing.
attack all Muslims everywhere,
Right, right. Now, I
and
want
use each of these incidents to basically fuel the fire against Muslims.
right. I mean, what could be the best counter to that?
And the counter is just explaining this is not true.
Right. Well,
Every time this happens and people go out and make these
right.
false statements,
I think
you counter
I
them. You
think
say this is
Riyaz,
nonsense.
you would agree with me. I mean, people.
You cannot stop everybody. I mean, there's
Right.
no way.
No.
If some people are determined to hate you, there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Right, right.
So that will be there. But what we can do is try to persuade people who are not determined to hate us,
Right.
who are maybe misguided, or who have been who have swayed, who have been
Right.
persuaded by mistake, have been misguided by these people, to make sure that they understand.
By the way, let me. This other topic is kind of popped up in my mind, and I think you have a lot to say on that. This whole Hussein Haqqani Washington Post article, which was published last week, and then there's been a series of controversies where Haqqani is saying, no, I didn't mean that, I mean X, Y, and Z. But what he basically said, that his relationship, this relationship established with the President Obama, kind of led to the capture of Osama bin Laden. Now, there's been President Zardari has come out and openly said that I have nothing to do with Hussein Haqqani. But former President Musharraf has said we have nothing to do with Haqqani. What is this Hussein Haqqani?
Well, he
thing
has his own
phenomenon?
agenda.
What is his agenda?
Well, you know how he has been behaving from the very beginning. He's an opportunist who's always looking out for himself. He started out being with the Jamiat-e-Talaba in Karachi University.
Right.
He then worked for Zia-ul Haq, which is extreme right-wing. I mean, Zia is responsible for a lot of the problems that we have today. He shares a large share of responsibility for it. Then he went to work for Benazir Bhutto.
Right.
And then he
sides,
tried to, pally up with Musharraf. In fact, he even landed a couple of consulting contracts with them. He wanted to become a minister, but he was rejected by them. And then when the People's Party government came back, then he tried to, join the People's Party government.
Right, but I mean,
So he has a history. And right now, he sees that Trump's star is rising.
okay.
Trump is now the president of this country. And he wants to be, on the good side of the Trump administration. Because there's two things he did in this article that he wrote, the op-ed. One thing he did was he defended the Trump administration because they're under attack for contacts with the Russians and the Russian ambassador.
Right.
He said, well, that's normal. We all do that.
Right.
Okay? And the second thing he did in that article was he tried to convey to President Trump that, hey, I have been of service to your country. I have rendered valuable services to you, so I'm your friend. So that's the whole agenda he has.
So audience in the upcoming days will try to see if Hussein Haqqani Sahib will, give us an interview, and we'll raise all these questions to him, because again, you have heard Riaz Haq as one of the side of the story, he has his own reasonings, and we'll see what Hussein Haqqani has to say, because there's been lots of debates and lots of controversies surrounding him. So anyhow, Riaz, let's move over to the this whole Russian links with the recent elections in U.S. Where will this lead us, and what will it do to the politics of U.S.?
First, let's do a little background on this. There was a hearing in the U.S. In U.S. Congress. There was a hearing of the Intelligence Committee of the U.S. Congress Intelligence Committee in Washington, where they talked to both the FBI director, Comey, as well as the director of national intelligence, Admiral Rogers. And at that hearing, Comey confirmed, FBI Director Comey confirmed, that they are investigating. The words he used was coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it's already well known that there were contacts between the Trump campaign and the Russians. It is also known that the Russians actively hacked and tried to sway the U.S. elections in the direction of Trump and against Hillary Clinton. But what is not known is whether or not there was a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians to do this, to achieve all of this. So what they're trying to figure out is, there's a range of possibilities in terms of coordination. One end, the extreme end, is where they actually actively colluded with them, and they worked hand in glove with the Russians to spread false news, to get the leaks out. That's one possibility. That there was actively they sought that, they asked them. The other extreme is that they simply encouraged them. Oh, okay, let's do that because it's helping us in the elections.
Right.
Okay, you do it. Now, so that's what they have to determine. What is the extent of that coordination?
Right.
Is it collusion or is it just encouragement?
What are the political implications of this?
Oh, huge, huge. I mean, if it turns out that they actively colluded and conspired with the Russians to change the outcome of the elections, then that is criminal. That is like working with a foreign country to try to undermine your own democracy. And that is a huge...
then we're looking at a possibility
there
of
could be a possibility of impeachment.
And re-election then.
Well, that comes later.
Right.
I mean, the re-election usually doesn't happen that way. If Trump is impeached, it doesn't mean there'll be a re-election. It could simply be that that the vice president, takes over, and we go on. Like it happened in the case of Nixon,
Right.
where they didn't actually impeach Nixon; they forced him out. They forced him to resign, and when he resigned, the vice president at the time, Gerald Ford, became the president.
Right. So, Raz, thank you so much for your kind information. And audience, will hopefully next week onwards, we'll be in our studio. See you next week. Keep watching Viewpoint from Overseas.